Jay Shaw, love over money. This topic I've been ongoing with this, and I'm just going to go ahead and do a preview of my grandfather, the man I love very much, Sully Sullivan. I'm proud of him. Yeah, I'm going to brag about my grandpa. A lot of Filipinos will be able to identify with what he's done because they're fans of cars and they like Fords. At least I think a lot of Filipinos do. My wife is not really into cars, but she's into plants. But I'm into the cars, fast cars, and sailboats, and motorcycles. But now I'm doing neither. But anyhow, Sully Sullivan, a legendary person that worked with Henry Ford. And I'm just going to be really simple and very passionate, no script. He was the inventor hired by Henry Ford to design and put together the V-8, flathead V-8 cast iron block engine. What that means is the first production V8 engine that you and me could buy, and all the other manufacturers copied because they could manufacture them at a lower cost, and assembly lines took off, and the automobile industry with V8s just, there they went. And that was a big thing. And my grandfather wasn't just, he worked with Carroll Shelby, he did the 289, but he wasn't just a hired engineer to help. He was the chief engineer who laid out the block, carburation, the whole system. He was not just a guy hanging around. He's kind of Ford's hidden hero, Sully Sullivan. And he was well into racing as well. And my grandfather spent a lot of time with me in the garage working on motorcycles and trying to get me to do cars. What are you doing with these motorcycles? You're going to get killed. But I didn't know. I had no idea what my grandpa did all these things, that he was so famous. I guess it was the kitchen, and they used to bring blocks and engine pieces and destroy the kitchen. And then, from what I heard, Henry would fix the kitchen, but they liked to hide out and do things away from the Ford factory. Things were done a lot different back then. Chevy was spying on Ford. Ford was spying on Chevy, the NASCAR, the IndyCar. It was a big proving ground for the automobile industry. So Sully Sullivan, my grandfather designed the flathead V8 engine. He designed the V8 logo. Henry Ford was walking by when he was working on the drafting table and saw this little V8 logo etched in his drafting board. And back then, nobody knew the engine was going to take off like it did. You go, that'll work. And he did. He used it. And the V8 logo was my grandfather's design. Sullivan was also from his drafting table. Very instrumental in the Carroll Shelby Mustang, the racing history. That's why I got Ford on my phone. I should have a Ford hat, but I don't have one. But we would sit in the garage and we would work on motorcycle tires and try to get me to go to cars, but my mom was afraid that I would get hurt driving race cars. Because back then, in stock car racing, Fireball Roberts and all the car drivers of the 60s and 70s, a lot of them died. And one of them was named Fireball Roberts, and he was very connected to my grandfather. In fact, his name Sully was written on his car. And I even got to meet Paul Newman, your grandfather. He's a legend. He helped him with the Cosworth IndyCar engines, even to the day he passed away when he was 89. My mom's probably crying right now. But he was very special. I got to spend about a week later, a whole day at the local racetrack with Paul Newman. And I got to drive and share the same car. You know, all we did is talk racing and cars, and my grandpa, we never mentioned movies at all. And I beat him. He goes, Sully, how are you doing that? How do you get that time? And because we weren't racing against each other, we were racing against the clock. So he goes on the back straight, long story, hit about 8 turns in a road course, an Indy type car, and he cuts off a flat portion of the straightaway and took out 2 or 3 turns, thinking he could make up for the time, but with grass on the wheel, and he got a little bit closer, but he didn't do it. And he came over. I still didn't beat you. But afterwards, we went to a little slick track. This is all true. It was funny. And a slick track was a little, go-kart track. We have a lot of those. Baby powder on the cement, and we went sliding circles. And the guy at the counter couldn't believe, is that Paul Newman? Yeah. Are you his son? Because your blue eyes? No. Anyways, they closed the place up for me and him, and he was pushing me off the track, ramming me, buying me hot dogs. It was great. I spent the whole day with Paul Newman and put quite an in-depth feature on my grandfather, the inventor of the flathead production V8 cast iron V8 engine. The 4-barrel carburetor was his project for Holley carburetors. A.J. Foyt's winning IndyCar in '64, I believe. The Ford Miller Special was my grandfather's engine. Bill Elliott's winning '88 NASCAR engine, if I got these years correct, was my grandfather's. A.J. Foyt, Le Mans in '67 with A.J. Foyt driving was my grandfather's engine, and he was there at all of them. And he was there with Fireball Roberts, not when he died, but when he was testing, he couldn't get the right numbers from the gauges and stuff. So he grabbed a milk crate, and my grandfather got in the back of the car, a NASCAR car, has nothing in the back seat. So he's sitting on a crate, and he's going 160 miles an hour, and my grandfather's looking over the front, the whatever you call a seat, gauges vibrating and writing down numbers. That's my grandfather. These are all true stories. He told me how Ford landed them at the beach instead of the airport, because Ford wanted to be secret with their equipment, because Chevy would go to the airport and spy on manufacturers. And it's just so much I got to learn. He always told me, just no talk, just do it. And unfortunately, I talk too much, but I do that. Anyways, there's so much more. Even as late as the Ford 5.0 V8 engine, he had some development in the turbocharging of the fuel injection of that engines. I'll throw in some pictures if I can. Like I said, this is just a rough overview. So basically, my grandfather was a legend, very soft-spoken. Back then, they didn't care about contracts, they didn't care about rights or patents. They just went to work and came home and ate and supplied for his family. He was a wonderful provider, wonderful father for my mom, and a wonderful grandfather, as well as I had a great dad and family life as well. But my grandfather was very historical, and I didn't know it until as much until after he passed. They did say, Jim, don't tell your mom that we talk about all this racing stuff in the garage. Don't tell her, I'll get in trouble. Because he'd pretend he didn't care, and then he'd be talking about the latest driver time, the fastest time they did, Bill Elliott's, whatever, all the NASCAR guys. I mean, he knew exactly what was going on, and he played dumb. He'd be at the kitchen table, and I start talking racing, he'd look at me, don't talk. Anyways, Sully Sullivan, inventor of the flathead production V8 engine, cast iron, to be totally correct. And the reason, again, was to produce the V8 engine in mass production for people like me and you. Otherwise, a V8 would have had to be custom built and stuff. And the 4-barrel carburetor for Holley, the 289 for Carl Shelby. Carl Shelby did all the chassis, and my grandfather did all the engines, and he also did the V6 That was in a NASCAR series, but never really took off. But he did design that engine as well, the complete engine. The block, the carburation system, everything that was involved. And it's funny, NASCAR used carburetors in their engines until just as little as maybe 8 years ago. Wasn't very long ago that they switched to fuel-injected engines. They were using good old-fashioned carburetors for most of the time, most of the history of NASCAR. So that's a little fun fact. But it's much safer now. And my mom just didn't want me to get hurt. So my grandfather, a legend at Ford, and Ford's hidden hero, my hidden hero. And this is just part one. Don Sully Sullivan, I love you. Fair winds, falling seas, and clear night skies. Good night all.